entirely misplaced. I find it to be disrespectful of me and my heritage, and I do not expect an apology, but I did want to say what I just articulated. Thank you.
Wow.
In the U.S., we see millions of cyber threats each year. That rate is increasing as more and more businesses move to the cloud.
Wow. Unbelievable. That was the chief of
I just want to go back
Homeland
really
Security.
quickly to Josh Hawley. Not only did he smear a Holocaust survivor's son, and smear a guy whose family, a lot of his family was wiped out by the Holocaust, he then put the clip up on his Instagram and says Hawley smokes Mayorkas. So what, burn? What, in the ovens, Josh? Is that what you're saying? Seriously? Like, no shame. And then he goes on Fox News and they do a victory lap about him attacking a Holocaust survivor's son. That is sick. And that's exactly how they get away with it.
Yeah.
And people that are watching are too stupid in this case to actually see that he's attacking Holocaust survivors' families in the middle of the greatest anti-Semitic campaign against Jews.
He knows
where there's
what he's
a
doing.
war, worldwide war against Jews. And he attacks a Jew and is shameless about it, and then goes on Fox News and they do a victory lap about it.
Anyone with any integrity, as we were just saying, when that moment happened, would have said, I'm so sorry. I did not know about your family's history. Let's talk about the policy. But of course, that's not who Josh Hawley is, and he wasn't there to talk about policy. He was there to post that clip. I smoked Mayorkas. Now I'm going to go on Fox News. We're going to do a touchdown dance about how I smoked Mayorkas.
I smoked Mayorkas. Would you really, after you learned that his mother survived concentration camp and her family was burned in the ovens of Auschwitz and other, would you really say, I smoked Mayorkas? Would anybody be, like, it's really
Sick.
It's sick.
It's sick.
It's sick because they know he
This is
knows.
how it works because they're in a safe bubble. He represents from a red state or a safe district. He goes on Fox News. He can post an alternate reality and raise money off of it. That's how he will get elected next time and raise money. And to our point, this is the playbook that Donald Trump taught him. It's don't apologize and be utterly shameless. No humanity or humility.
But there has to be some standard. If you want to fight him on the border, fair game.
Do it.
Go after
By
what's
the
happening
way,
at the border.
that's right. We'll do that.
Yes, go at it.
We'll all do that.
Go at it
Yeah.
and then go and sit with Hannity and talk about the border. But to your point, in the context of what's happening in this country right now with anti-Semitism, what's happening in the world, to go celebrate an attack on a man who just told you his mother survived the Holocaust, it's sick.
But his
It's deeply
voters,
sick.
they don't know the truth. They're watching Fox.
Right, they didn't
They're
get the clip.
listening to his. They don't know. They think they're getting news. They think they're getting information.
By the way, I just got to say,
Truth.
on the same network, a couple weeks ago, you had somebody actually saying elections don't matter
Right.
on their biggest
Unchecked.
show. Elections don't matter. We're going to have to resort to violence.
Did
We're going to
anyone
have
at
to
the table
do
say anything?
what the North did during the Civil War. We're going to have to resort to violence. Elections don't matter.
Think about it.
Yeah, that's after they paid $787 million. That's after Tucker Carlson. That's before the $1 billion settlement coming up before them. And they still let people go on their air saying elections don't matter. We're going to have to resort to violence. And then they sit there and go, oh, wait, well, they're not to be taken seriously. Like Tucker's lawyer said, oh, nobody believes him. Nobody believes him. You're not supposed to believe him.
too many mixed signals.
Yeah, well, a lot of people did, and 4 cops are dead.
Okay. Donald Trump Jr. took the stand yesterday as a witness in the New York $250 million civil fraud trial. In his testimony that lasted just under an hour and a half, he insisted.
Who does he look like there, Will?
Okay.
Now, who does he look
No,
like?
no.
I'm just asking who he looks
Because
like.
it's not the
Can't
great.
tell
really
that
look
one.
like him. That's sketchy.
That doesn't look like him, but it's
Okay.
like a
Serpico?
All right.
Oh,
Big
Mike.
Daddy's a
Oh.
serpent.
Looks
Yeah,
like
I
the
think. I
Grinch
think.
sitting there
Insisted
in
he
the
never worked
chair.
on his father's financial statements and that he relied. Nobody say anything. No, some of this might be funny.
I'm just curious what he looks like here. He's
Ringo Starr.
He says he relied on other staff members to verify the accuracy of documents. Trump Jr. is an executive vice president of the Trump Organization and acted as a trustee of a trust set up from former President Trump's assets while Donald Trump was in office. The Associated Press reports at least one of the annual financial statements bore language saying the trustees are responsible for the document. But Donald Trump Jr. said he didn't recall ever working on any of the financial statements and had no specific knowledge of them. Don Jr. was the first of 4 members of the family to testify and will return to the stand today. Eric Trump is also scheduled to testify today. Ivanka Trump and former President Donald Trump will take the stand next week. Donald Trump was not in attendance for his son's testimony, but did react on his Truth Social page, again calling out the judge in the case, quote, "Leave my children alone." And Gorin, you are a disgrace to the legal profession. George Conway, where do we begin?
It's
First of
hard
all,
to know.
You know, it's really sad that we have been divided this way in America on so many different issues, that we have so many different signals now going out to so many different people that are so confused. They don't know the right from the left or the left from the right. It's really, really reached a pivotal point in America with not just Donald Trump, but everything else, that it's just total chaos. It's anarchy. Giving my viewers time to read that. I've heard Donald Trump use the word hoax now, probably more so than any other person in my entire life. And come to find out, the hoaxer that's accusing everybody of performing a hoax is himself a hoax. In so many ways.
Well, yeah. I mean, the way it's supposed to work is, I mean,
you know they weren't going to take any responsibility.
right? They're not going to take any responsibility. They just point at the accountants.
Yes.
They point at something or they
Blame
don't recall
some-
things.
yeah.
And in a criminal case, that might work because you have to prove criminal intent beyond a reasonable doubt. The problem is this is a civil case, and the statements have already been found to be false, and so.
Right.
This isn't going to help them all because the judge can make findings, say, I don't believe that he didn't remember that. I don't believe that he was relying on the accountants.
Or I
The story
feel
doesn't
that-
make any sense.
Or that was negligent.
Right.
If he didn't remember.
Right, and I think that it doesn't even matter that he could find beyond all you have to do is find out 50.01% more likely than not that there was fraud committed, and they knowingly did that, and it's easy to do, and it's going to be the judge will make credibility findings and say these people are all liars, and that's not really about.
So the defense here, as we've seen in other cases, is that they'll try and delay it. The Trump side, can they? Because this could be expensive. So if he finally gets his punishment, they decide it's a certain amount of money. How long can the Trump side drag it out? Because this is the decision on how much he pays, correct?
There will be.
It's already been found.
There will be an appeal. The part of the judgment that has already been issued that cancels the business certificates of the Trump companies has been stayed, understandably, because once you do that, you can't unscramble the eggs. And they probably will get a stay pending appeal but you have to post.
You know, this is all interesting in a way, but whenever it comes to the leadership of this great nation, what is it to us that we have to know the business affairs of Donald J. Trump or his son or anything about Donald J. Trump, either before, during, or after his presidency, other than his presidency. There's so much drama that surrounds Donald J. Trump that don't even really have anything to do with presidential problems pertaining to we the people. And it's reached a level of embarrassment how that they continue to latch on to that particular concept, and really and truly it's a distraction. I hate to use that word, but it's a distraction from where the people should be focusing on the most regarding we the people's problems. I agree with the anti-Semitism problems that's been now growing ecstatically here in America, especially since 1988, whenever 9 Tapes went to the White House towards a bunch of fakers and phony believers, people that wanted to put their image out there towards being a true born-again believing Christian. But yet now I've seen from that moment on how America started going backwards. And of course we had to go through what we went through with, and I'm looking at moral issues right now, not legal issues, but we had to go through what we went through with Jimmy Swaggart's ministry, and then we had to go through what we went through on the presidential side of it with Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. You know, these people up here in Dresden, Tennessee, that work in the courthouse, they really thought that they had scored a big score because Dennis James Jackson decided to plead out guilty on a criminal crime charge that he never should have pleaded out on, regarding me being a stalker of 3 innocent children across the road because of all the problems that had originated from their landlord, and the tenants was getting on board towards basically turning it into a show. They was being entertained by it. And it's really, really sad that Johnson up there was misled by all these people around here, because he come from somewhere in Arkansas, the way that I understand it. He's not even a true Tennessean, and he only knew the bits and pieces about Dennis Jackson and didn't know the whole story about Dennis Jackson, especially whenever you go all the way back into Dennis Jackson's life, in what type of childhood that he had, what type of people around here that allowed for all that stuff to go on. He really didn't have a clue, I don't think, in what type of people that he was coming over the Mississippi River to come and represent. He really didn't have a clue. You know, in every state that I've went to, almost every state, you know, Tennessee has got a reputation of being a volunteer state. Tennessee has a reputation of what went on during Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett. And that's an image that people has put into their minds, and that's an image that they have of Tennesseans. They have no idea all the particulars of what went on during the era of Davy Crockett, of how that he had to tell a group of people basically that he was going to Texas, the rest of them could go straight to hell. They didn't know about all the particulars and all the other stuff that's went on here in Northwest Tennessee pertaining to a group of people that could care less about children. I figured that I was going across the line whenever my brother and I made the telephone call to Nashville, Tennessee, to child abuse services, and then they suggested for us to make a telephone call to Weakley County Child Abuse Center here in Weakley County. I figured that I was crossing the line pertaining to taboo. I just didn't realize how interly connected that it was, even going into law enforcement pertaining to the people that we have hired to rule our lives. I mean, there was an incident that come on back about 2 or 3 years ago of something that went on with, I think it was either the sheriff or the sheriff's deputy, with a 13 or a 14-year-old kid. Maybe it was a 12-year-old kid, I don't know. But it popped up on news one time and one time only, and since then I haven't heard nothing else about it pertaining to how that agency was basically being looked at negatively pertaining to what they'd done to that child. They sweep it away. Just like what went on in Nashville pertaining to 2 different members that was black, of having them basically fired from their positions. Why the white woman that was basically doing the exact same thing didn't get nothing. You know, information like that, that's really, really important to the concept of who and what we are in Tennessee. All of a sudden, that stuff just gets swept away. And there ain't no telling how many other events that comes on TV that is very, very serious. Extremely serious, regardless whether it be on ABC, MSNBC, Fox, CBS, or whoever. And all of a sudden, it pops up and it goes away. It pops up and it goes away. Is it because somebody decided that it wasn't important enough to research on? Or was it because somebody had enough power of telling somebody else, we don't want to air this no more on our airwaves. Turn it off. We don't want to hear nothing else about it. In other words, people being blackmailed in the media towards not being able to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And who's to say that that's not what went on in the Oklahoma investigation or the Waco investigation towards the media not explaining the whole truth to the American people in the world. There's certain people that basically are running the show that has the power and has the influences to the degree that they can take wrong, turn it into right, or take right and turn it into wrong. And whenever you have that, you have a problem. You have a problem with democracy towards basically people being blackmailed or bought out.
It's the wealthy. So if you look over here, this is by income, lowest income, highest income folks, and what percent of their income they don't report. But down here in the bottom 50%, there's pretty much a high level of tax compliance. When you get over here to the top 5% and the top 1%, it's a different picture. You're talking about people who are not reporting over 20% of their income to the IRS by various means of how they fill out their tax returns. And these are folks who make over $600,000 a year here. So there is a lot of money out there for the IRS to collect.
But yet now they'll focus more on the person that's only making $75,000 to $100,000 a year. You tell me what's wrong with that picture, huh? Or is the IRS sharks too frightened to go after these bigger sharks because they got bigger pockets? Because they got bigger friends?
Is trying to do is essentially allow them to continue to not pay their taxes.
So Steve, let me just going over to the next chart, because what's so fascinating is that there are a lot of times you put money into agencies and people complain you don't see a return. But as your next chart's going to point out, investments in IRS enforcement, especially when it's been underfunded for years, will actually pay for itself.
Joe, I really think you should just come over here to the Southwest Wall and do this because you got it all down.
I'm too shy.
You're too shy, yes. I know that. Very quiet guy. So let's look back at the IRS's audit rates. So these are what percent of returns they audit by income, highest income down to lowest income, back to 2010. And back in 2010, if you were in the upper income, $10 million or more, you had over a 20% chance of getting audited. Today, that chance of getting audited is under 5%. And you can see the other curves for lower incomes have gone down also, but it's gone down the most for the wealthy. Why has it gone down the most for the wealthy? Because it costs the most to audit them. And as we'll see, the IRS has been short of funds, and so they've cut back on auditing the wealthy, which obviously produces even less revenue. So to Joe's point, let's talk about what the IRS gets back. For every dollar the IRS spends auditing somebody in the top 0.1%, that's $9 million of income roughly a year, the IRS gets back $6.30. So $1 of spending yields $6.30 of revenue, a bit less for the top 1%. And then when you get down to the bottom 50%, actually the IRS loses a little bit of money auditing those folks. But for the reasons I said, because it is so time intensive to audit the wealthy, they tend to cut back on those audits the most when they have budget issues.
And that may just be one reason that he just got to explaining. The other reason may be the fear factor of them being afraid to do their jobs and going after these people, because these people usually has powerful attorneys, powerful people that stand with them, and because of it, it ain't worth the fight a lot of times that some of these agencies put into their own heads.
Who can't afford minders to take care of their IRS audits or to fight to get their refunds back. If you're a working American and the IRS owes you a tax refund, good luck. Good luck getting somebody on the phone that's going to help get that money back.
Exactly.
Or good luck with letters,
Exactly.
emails, whatever. It is like a lot of agencies
it's rigged.
in Washington, D.C., it's operating with computers out of the 1980s.
It's rigged.
Yeah, and because we have been, because
It's a
the
hoax.
Republicans in particular have been trying to starve the IRS's budget, it forced them over the years to cut back the number of agents they had. And things like call times shot up. The amount of time you've spent sitting on the phone just trying to get somebody to talk to you went way up. But so here's what happened. And this is after adjusting for inflation. The IRS's budget was pretty steady until about 2010. And then in the course of a bunch of other budget agreements, Republicans succeeded in cutting the budget, resulting in this cutting of the IRS's headcount. Now, Joe Biden, in the Inflation Reduction Act, won $80 billion of new funding for the IRS over the next 10 years. The Republicans have been carving this back. First, in the debt ceiling debate that we had in June, they got $20 billion cut out of the IRS budget. And now the Johnson bill would cut another $14 billion out of the IRS budget. You'd still have an increase, but it would be a much, much smaller increase. And Joe, as you said in your lead-in, so here's the net of the whole thing. The Johnson bill would cut $14 billion. It would offset that aid to Israel that we've been talking about. The Treasury would lose $27 billion of revenue. So at the end, the deficit would actually go up by $12 billion because they're cutting this funding from the IRS.
So yeah, another $12 billion added on to the deficit with the new Speaker's First Act. All right, Steve. Well, thank you so much. I mean, the thing that really has been connected here, Steve, actually is when you look at all these charts together, it is very clear Republicans want to slash IRS funding because they want the line to continue going down on the richest 1% of Americans actually getting audited. And since they cheat disproportionately on their taxes, those are billions and billions of dollars more that are kept from balancing the budget.
Yep, $428 billion out there every year to be collected if we were to fund the IRS the way it should be funded instead of what the Republicans are trying to do.
All right.
Wow. All right, Steve Ratner.
On the southwest
you.
wall. Look
Thank you.
at that
I
shot.
know, but it's
Ratner's
depressing,
charts.
but
It's kind of
recording.
like, wow, really is like the Green Monster.
Oh,
isn't
yeah.
it?
Cable news.
All right.
We got to play wiffle ball in here. We can play wiffle ball. I know we wanted to go to the
Get up
MLB
out of the
Network.
chair, Joe.
Home plate over there, first, second. and
Thanks, Steve.
Ratner's wall, and you go
All
over
right, you're
Ratner's
dragging this
wall
out.
with wiffle ball. It's a grand slam.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Some news from the world of sports. Legendary college basketball coach Bobby Knight has died. The Hall of Famer got his start at Army in 1965, but he's best known for his 29 seasons at Indiana University, where he led that school to 3 national championships. The first of those came in 1976 when Indiana went undefeated, a feat no team has accomplished since. He would go on to coach at Texas Tech for 7 seasons before retiring in 2008. Knight was the Big Ten Coach of the Year 5 times and a 4-time National Coach of the Year. He's also one of only 3 coaches to have won an NCAA title, an NIT title, and an Olympic gold medal. Bob Knight was 83 years old. Let's bring in college basketball analyst for ESPN and ESPN insider Jay Billis and longtime sports columnist and New York Times best-selling author Mike Lupica. Guys, thanks so much for being on this morning to talk about this. Jay, I'll start with you. You were playing at Duke in the peak years of Bob Knight at Indiana. He won a national championship, I think, right around your junior or senior year with Keith Smart and Steve Alford and those guys. And then you got to work alongside him at ESPN. So what are your reflections this morning on Coach Knight?
Well, Willie, Bob Knight was an American original. And while he was not for everyone, he was a friend of mine. And we spent a lot of time together, not only when we worked together, we played a lot of golf, went overseas several times. And you know, he was one of the greatest coaches ever. When you would sit and watch practice, he got in and out of situations and dissected the game like no other coach I've ever been around. His ability, I think he could have coached anything, any sport, and been great at it. That's how proficient he was in breaking things down. He had, but when I said he's not for everyone, at his best, there was nobody better. But when he wasn't at his best, I could always understand people that didn't care for him. And I never argued with those people. He was unique, and I've never met anyone like him. But you know, one of the true greats that have ever walked the sideline. And he was smart. He was engaging. At times, he was uncommonly stubborn and thoughtless, but a very emotional person. And I think that's one of the things that did cause him some problems. You know, when he was let go at Indiana, when he was fired in 2000, I don't think it was anger that he had at Indiana. I think it was emotional hurt that manifested itself and looked like anger to others, if that makes sense.
And see, those are things that a lot of your self-righteous people consider inappropriate, that you're not supposed to show your emotions like that to the public. Thing about it is, all of us are very complex people, and we're going to have good days, bad days. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have happy times. You're going to have sad times. But to go back to what they was talking about pertaining to the IRS, it's called, in a nutshell, straining at a gnat to swallow a camel. And whenever you have a government that is now picking on the unfortunate versus going after the conglomerates, then you have a unsubstantiating, unbalanced, unsustainable scenario going on, to the point that no wonder we're going in the hole basically $500 billion every year, just because of what the IRS is not doing, or how that they're performing their duties towards going after the big boys. It's really sad, and I've said this before, that when you have a government that don't know what the left hand versus the right hand is doing, and when you have so many people in these agencies that could care less about the grand scheme of things pertaining to the purse, inevitably you're going to have a government that's going to go backwards. As they have said, that we're spending, what was it, over $5 trillion a year, and we're only getting back like $3 trillion. We're going in the hole like $2 trillion, right at $2 trillion every year. That's been our pattern. That's been the average now for the past, I guess, 10 years. And all those things it's doing is increasing every time there's a horrible, horrible natural catastrophe. It adds that much more deficit to the American people's bank account. They call it the purse. So, you know, it's no wonder that the American people are suffering right now, not only in not being able to help their fellow man pertaining to their allies overseas, regardless of what ally that it may be, but it's got to the point that they can't even help their own people pertaining to standing up against the illegal immigrants coming over the border, down on the southern border, not counting all the other borders. Or it's got to the point that they can't even help pertaining to their veterans, of so many homeless people being out there, or other areas that that our government should be applying their services towards that can't. They can't. Because they are not being effective in doing their jobs. As I said, they want to focus more on the individuals that don't have the power or the money to be able to hire these Johnny Cochrans, per se. And because of it, they're scared to go after these big conglomerates, regardless whether it be an oil company, regardless whether it be big pharma or other big agencies out there that basically everybody and their brother knows that are swindling the people. But yet, no, our government officials don't go after these people.
American citizens are still in Gaza. They say more departures are expected over the next several days, but officials stress the situation, Willie, is still very fluid.
And meanwhile, Israeli troops continue to push further into Gaza.
It's dire.
Israeli Defense Forces
It's dire
released new
over
video of combat activity inside the territory. They say they've destroyed dozens of Hamas targets, including anti-tank
And Hamas
squads
has
and
done all
military
this.
outposts. The IDF says it also killed another Hamas commander yesterday after launching a new airstrike on Gaza's largest refugee camp. This is the second time the densely populated neighborhood has been attacked by Israel this week. The United Nations says these strikes could be a war crime. Israeli officials responded in a statement saying, quote, Hamas deliberately builds its terror infrastructure under, around, and within civilian buildings.
Sure they did.
Intentionally endangering
Sure they
Gazan
did.
civilians.
And we're talking about
That
their
all comes
government.
as a senior Hamas official has vowed to repeat the attacks of October 7th, quote, again and again until Israel is completely destroyed. In an interview with Lebanese television, the official warned Hamas would replicate those horrific attacks, stating, quote, Israel is a country that has no place on our land. So, Congressman, there you have it. For people calling for a ceasefire, this is what the Israelis are up against.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. By the way, I hear about the UN saying a lot about this. Where's the UN been in Ukraine? Where have they been in talking about the Russian attacks in Syria? The Russians repeatedly hitting hospitals there.
Exactly.
Look, I hear people say that Israel's indiscriminately bombing in Gaza. Listen, indiscriminate bombing by Israel would have about 100,000 dead civilians right now. Obviously, we want no dead civilians in Gaza. But Israel is doing everything they can to be precise. It's Hamas who made it clear they would repeat the attacks of October 7th just now. It's Hamas who is not building bomb shelters that are clearly marked. They're building underground networks so they can move men and materials around to create another attack.
The refugee camp that was hit.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's do you put stuff in a refugee camp? Do you put military materials? Do you hide your high-value targets? It's a terrible situation. But living in a densely populated area does not grant sanctuary to a terrorist organization.
Donnie, we don't want to amplify that entire interview with the Hamas spokesperson, but if you watch it, it's not shocking because we know exactly how they feel. But to hear him say it so explicitly that said, we will do this again and again, and just saying out loud, our goal, let's be clear here, is to destroy Israel.
And you guys have been so wonderful this week talking about it and how Israel somehow is graded differently.
Yeah.
That there's no other country, there's no other people in the world who were attacked, beheaded, raped, massacred, mutilated, yet they have to use restraint. And, you know, it attaches to this. I'm holding up the post of somebody ripping off posters of the hostages there. And somehow Israel, even in the wake of a Hamas leader saying, we're going to come again and again and destroy you, yet Israel always seems to be on trial. Israel always seems to be defending themselves.
The double standard applies college campuses so much. You're a Jew at Harvard. You can't even walk across your own campus without being surrounded and attacked. You have students at Penn that you've shown.
I can't even
celebrating the raping of women, the slaughtering of babies, the burning of, if that had happened and people were celebrating violence, think about, I want everybody at home to think about this. Any group on college campuses And by the way, administrators have bubble wrapped everybody over the past 10 years with speech codes and safe spaces. Where are the safe spaces for the Jews? You know what? Jews don't have safe spaces, and they're not asking for them. But they should be able to walk across a campus without being assaulted by fellow students.
Exactly.
And just any other students that attacked students the way Jews are being attacked, they would be expelled in a second.
Somehow.
Expelled in a second.
In a second. Somehow, it's okay to go after Jews. It's okay. Somehow, through history, it just cheering. People are cheering, and Jews are being slaughtered. And it is the level, you guys have covered this all week, the level of anti-Semitism, the level of hate towards Jews from the beginning of time to today. It's mind-numbing. If this, to Joe, to your point, if this happened to any other group, we showed a video, we were talking just now of
I can't even believe
woman,
it.
I don't know if you're going to play it, a woman cheering. It was in Philly last night, our greatest moment. A student. Our greatest moment. If this was any other group, there would be outrage.
By
And
the
yet the
way-
media, other than this place, and Nicole Show and a few other places, is silent, doesn't freaking cover it.
And she says,
She felt empowered.
I
by what
know
happened.
that when you saw women being raped, so they were bleeding in their pants, when you saw babies beheaded, all these things, when you saw these images, she said, I know you felt empowered. Now, if that were said, let us go back. Let us go back to Charlottesville. I guarantee you, if the administration and that mob saw any students, sure, they would have been expelled in a second.
At UVA.
And yet
At UVA, they would have been expelled in a second. People who worked, Caddy, people who worked, who were seen in that crowd, fired. But here, you have people openly saying they felt empowered by the raping of Jewish women. They feel empowered by the images of children being shot in front of their parents and parents being shot in front of their children. The videos are out there. They have exposed themselves. And yet, if you do unto them what universities would do unto any other group, then it's a violation of the First Amendment.
So I think here, as in, and I'm watching this in Europe too, we have a generation of kids,
Australia,
of students today who,
a lot of
and I've
countries.
spoken to many of them over the last couple of weeks, feel much further removed from the events of the Holocaust than my generation does. You know, my parents lived through it. So they were, of course, not Holocaust survivors, but they lived through the Second World War, and it felt intensely personal. And I'm struck, speaking to students in the United States at the moment, how little they feel that. How little they feel that the Holocaust still resonates with them. It feels like a historical event that happened in another time and couldn't possibly happen again. And students that I have spoken to over the last couple of weeks are much more focused on what is happening in Gaza and the killings of Palestinians there. And you see it reflected in the polls. This is a real problem for the White House and for Joe Biden, because his numbers amongst young Americans are going down rapidly. I mean, our young Americans, they're not, 59% of Americans now under the age of 30 don't support America giving weapons and military support to Israel at the moment. And that is at the moment when Israel has been attacked.
In other words, we're just supposed to sit and watch our brothers and sisters be mutilated, be massacred, and not do nothing about it. This is my question. Whenever the time comes for us to be mutilated, are all those people that has watched us not perform and do our jobs in the name of not just democracy, but in the name of a righteous, holy, eternal God, are they just going to stand back and let us be mutilated too? You do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. And whenever you start performing this way as the masses pertaining to an entity, you're asking for big, big trouble coming from above and below, because the Bible is very clear blessed is those who bless Jerusalem and Israel, and cursed are those who curse them. It's got to do with righteousness pertaining to godliness versus unrighteousness pertaining to evil. That's what we're up against. And I've been saying that all along, and I had no earthly idea that the powers was going to be this strong whenever I moved back here in 2014, that as far as I'm concerned, every one of these law enforcement agencies around here in this area, they need their positions jerked away from them, and a lot of them's badges need to be put on the desk. And that's just on a local level. I can go to a state level, just like what happened up there in Davidson County in my life, in Nashville, Tennessee. Whenever, once more, they thought they had a big fish. They found out where I was working and where I was living at. They raided my place at night, questioned me about what went on in my life out in Oklahoma, that as far as I'm concerned was none of their business at the time, because they only had a warrant pertaining to a Jewish center in Davidson County that put out a warrant for me because I had left a cassette tape or a DVD at their front door. Well, apparently they must have thought about it and discussed it, because after they arrested me and contacted the people that actually put out the warrant, they didn't come to represent the warrant. They contacted them again and kept me in jail for about another 10 days in Davidson County. Once more, we go before the judge. There is nobody representing the warrant. By law, and this is the only reason why they didn't keep me in there, by law, they have to throw the charge out, according to the attorney that was representing me. But they didn't throw it out. They done an illegal procedure. Even though I'd lived in Davidson County and not ever had not one bad episode, not even so much as a bad check or a ticket in that county towards having to go in front of a judge, they said, Mr. Jackson, we're going to take this and we're going to put it down on the bottom shelf for the next 11 months and 29 days. And if you so much as even get caught jaywalking in the state of Tennessee and we find out about it, we're going to combine this charge along with that charge, and then we're going to go in front of the court again. So there's no doubt that various law enforcement agencies here in the state of Tennessee, not just Johnson, not just Tommy Thomas, not just Tommy Moore or Judge Pence or other law enforcement agencies around here, they had blackballed me, and it goes all the way back to the occurrence that happened in 1989 up in Madison County, whenever Homeland Security, people on the top, people that had the power, decided that they was going to intervene with the ministry and confiscate a sword that belonged to the ministry. And to me, it wouldn't have been no difference if it would have been a purple cloth, if it would have been a cross, if it would have been a bow and arrow, if it would have been whatever, especially with it being contained, locked up into a show box that you could see but you couldn't get to. I not only suffered towards being charged with a deadly weapon, but then protested the matter up in Jackson, Tennessee at their courthouse, and they picked me up, put me in a police squad car, and hauled me to a psychiatric ward. These are the problems, the resistance movements that the founder of the Windmill Ministries have been going through since day one. Since 9 tapes went to the White House in 1988, and they did not respond properly. So whenever you get to looking at the anti-Semitism here in America, it just didn't begin just within the past 3 weeks since Israel's been attacked. These things have been building, have been festering, have been basically, kind of like a cancer. It's been spreading. And that's one of the reasons why that the so-called church world around here in the Bible Belt area turned their backs on me and treated me like a red-headed stepchild, to the point that not only was I an outcast, but whenever I come back to 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, then all of a sudden my brother was an outcast. The thing about my brother, they was already playing with him and toiling with him. Anybody that's going to take somebody down on their own property and take their own gun away from them and then put it to their head, and the only thing that saved my brother was the fact that the clip had fallen out of the gun, and the gun had a safety feature on it that if the clip wasn't in the gun, even though you had a shell in the chamber, the gun would not activate. That's the only thing that saved my brother's life whenever 3 individuals took my brother down on his own property. And basically a whole clan of people within this region was all embarked upon that movement. And I guarantee you, if they would have gotten lucky and killed my brother then, because like David said, that if that device would have discharged, I not only would have went to my dad's funeral. Actually, I went to my older brother's funeral first, and then I went to my dad's funeral. But I would have actually had 3 funerals to go to of close family members, all within 29 years, all within a year's period. All within a year's period. So you tell me that we wasn't being attacked? You tell me that we wasn't being attacked? You tell me that this community leadership pertaining to the patriarchs in this area has not let the Windmill Ministries missions down, along with the law enforcement agencies? Sure they have. Sure they have. And it's built to what it has today, and now we're seeing the grand results of. And that's what I continue to keep telling these people, and they must think that I'm just blowing smoke. They must think that I'm just spewing out a bunch of stuff because they've already done categorized me towards me being a lunatic or a liar or somebody that was striving towards some sort of attention. And because of their pride, they refuse to acknowledge the truth.
And
I got news for them. One day, we're all going to stand in front of the same Creator, and we're all going to give an account for the things that we've done versus the things that we didn't do that we know that we should have done. I continue to preach that, and I'm going to continue to preach that until I see a movement here among the people, and until I hear an apology from these people that has manifested this type of atmosphere for we the people, not just here in America, but all over the planet.
And spoken about Jews and about anti-Semitism, I cannot tell you how much it means to myself and to other Jewish people. This show has been a bastion of honesty, of clarity, of bravery. I'm so proud to be associated with you.
Well, you know, it's really, really pretty simple, isn't it? I mean, after George Floyd, we spoke out clearly. After the killing of other Black Americans, we speak out clearly. It's just
girl
it's
in Kentucky.
That's how
other people all over the schools and stuff. All these other mass murders,
and defend those who are preyed upon. It doesn't matter who, and whether it is a Black teenager who is stopped by a police officer,
right,
for driving while Black,
right,
or whether it's a Jew being harassed on a college campus,
right,
fearing for his or her safety. I'm sorry, that's how I was raised. That's how we were all raised. But for some reason, I do have to ask, who's raising these kids?
Well, and who's running these universities?
And who's running these universities, Willie, that's allowing a Jew to get attacked walking across the lawn of Harvard?
I take Caddy's point about the generational divide, and she's right about that. On the other hand, you should not have had to experience the Holocaust firsthand
Thank you.
to know that attacking a religious group, sometimes physically, in the case of Hamas, the most violent things we've seen since the Holocaust, to know that that's wrong, to stand up to that. So I appreciate you saying that, Donnie, but I agree with Joe. This is an easy one.
Yeah.
If you can't condemn the stuff we saw on October 7th, there's something wrong with you. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
There's something deeply wrong with you.
I can't even understand, like, why the Jews? Why is this like the target of everybody?
It's
right?
spiritual warfare.
The smallest religion, one of the smallest religions, if not the smallest. And, you know, we take a lot of effort to not offend Christians, of which I am. We make a lot of effort now, and the UN's really serious about, like, we don't want to offend people of the Islamic faith, and we don't want to. But somehow Jews, it's like, that's
We deserve it. We deserve it.
Yeah,
Come to us.
it's
Well,
different.
the big lie about anti-Semitism is, they'll blame it on, I don't know, they'll blame it on Netanyahu.
Right,
I am
yeah.
no fan of Netanyahu. No fan. In fact, Netanyahu's no fan of this show because he attacked this show years ago on Twitter, and I sat there thinking, doesn't he have a more important job to do than attacking Morning Joe?
Right.
So they'll blame it on Netanyahu. But it's funny, there was anti-Semitism before Netanyahu. They'll blame it even on Israel being formed in 1948. It's funny. There was anti-Semitism 3,000 years before Israel was formed in 1948. I mean, how long has it been with us? You go back to the Magna Carta, something that we celebrate. The Magna Carta says, here are all these rights for people in England, except Jews. You have a right to your own property and da-da-da-da, except for Jews. You have a right for redress against the king, except Jews. Like, it has been with us for such a long time, not just in Western civilization, but all over the world. And my God, we think it's bad here. You look in France, and look what happened to Jews. What's happening to Jews in France. You look at cemeteries that are being burned. What is that, in Austria?
Vienna, yeah.
In Vienna? Jewish cemeteries in 2023 being torched at night in Austria, a country, I don't know, if I'm Austria, I'd take a little more care with my Nazi outbursts. You look at Germany, far-right party growing in power. You look, again, college students walking across campuses in Germany, and what are they doing? They're shouting, to the ovens, to the ovens. In Germany, it is.
And you have Josh Hawley.
and by the way, 15 million Jews. Only 15 million Jews alive.
It would be 250 million if not for the Holocaust.
All this world would be 250 million, but for the Holocaust, that's what Hitler succeeded in doing. And now there are only 15 million Jews, and those even, Adam, at the most elite universities and the most powerful country in the world are under siege because college presidents won't protect them.
Yeah, it's incredible. I keep looking over here at this picture.
Show that.
And it's like, how many times, we see all the videos now on Twitter of these people that, it's like a weird magnetism to tear down we have to tear down these little posters of people that have been kidnapped.
Children who've been kidnapped.
Yeah, we have to tear them down. And I saw one yesterday, a video where there's a guy trying to tear him down, and people are standing in between the posters and the guy, but he just couldn't. He has to try to reach over, and he has to keep trying to grab and tear it down. It's like, what is in your head where when somebody puts up a poster of a missing child that has been kidnapped by a terrorist organization, you have to tear it down? You know what that is? That's Holocaust denialism.
Sure it is.
That is denialism again.
That's hate.
And I
hate to
ask
Jews.
once more time, why is the UN not in Israel focusing on these dead Israelis that were murdered? I get it. I want them in Gaza. I want them concerned with human rights, but I haven't heard much from them here, and I don't hear much from them in Ukraine as Russia continues to launch missiles at them. Instead, their sole focus right now
It's
is
so funny that there are kind of ironic that the very people that are so shocked and stunned and offended by the humanitarian crisis in Gaza never really opened their mouth that much when Putin was lobbing missiles into Ukraine, killing Ukrainians in apartment buildings. It's anti-Semitism, clear and simple. We have an important election coming up.
And given all this,
We have an important election coming up, probably the most important election of, I think, my lifetime.
Yeah, I agree.
Coming up. You
Renegade.
and I, both former Republicans, you and I, both conservative, and actually conservative.
Yeah, like real ones.
Not radicals, conservatives. You and I both conservatives. Our party just keeps getting worse. They're screwing over the military in the Senate. They're attacking, eviscerating, besmirching military leaders in the House. The Republicans are. It seems like a full-scale attack against the military, a full-scale attack against law enforcement. If you're a Capitol Hill cop, a full-scale attack against law enforcement. If you're in the FBI, a full-scale attack against the rule of law. Whatever it is, like all the things that drove my parents from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party in the late 1960s when Democrats were trying radicals were trying to tear down institutions. We've just done a complete U-turn, and now it's Republicans that are trying to tear down institutions. And as I always say, I do the Burke quote, the founder of conservatism, who said, institutions that are built up in 1,000 years can be torn down in a day. Yeah, that's what Donald Trump wants to do, and it's what it's what Steve Bannon said from the beginning. I'm a Leninist. I want to destroy the government.
What is it that Republicans stand for now? I mean, I ask myself that. Okay, people say, well, they're for fiscal responsibility. Well, I was in Congress when we spent a lot of money. Okay, people can say, well, they're for a strong national defense. Okay, well, about half the party right now doesn't want to support Ukraine. About a quarter of the party, most of the party right now is saying, hey, let's support Israel in this, but we have to do it at the cost of the IRS. Why? Because I can go on a certain news channel and go after the IRS, which everybody hates, and so that's actually good for fundraising. Really, it all boils down to, like, it's great for fundraising and great for outrage. And in the book, I mean, that's what I talk about, is just watching. You got to watch a few years before I came in, and I got to watch the years after you left and on, and just now I can look back and be like, oh, there were all these signs that we were going to become a party unmoored to any principle, and it was all just about outrage and fundraising. And what conservatism has become is no longer principles. Conservatism has become, can you be offensive? Can you be the one that's the most radical? The one party at the one table at the Lincoln Day dinner with the weirdos, the next year becomes like everybody at the Lincoln Day dinner and what they believe.
By the way, there always was that table. You would shake hands with Main Street Republicans. You would walk past the table of weirdos and go, how you doing? Thanks so much for it. And you would keep walking and talking to people who believed in balancing the budget, and supporting Israel and pushing back on Russia and all those very weird things that we Republicans used to believe.
So, Congressman, let's get your take on the new Speaker of the House, someone you served with. Someone who, at the moment, has Israel aid, but with conditions and offsets, and going to raise the deficit. Someone who, at least to this point, has not been willing to support funding for Ukraine, and someone who was one of the leaders in efforts to overturn Joe Biden's election.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he's just he's a well-dressed insurrectionist. I mean, my interaction with Mike Johnson, I had a few, didn't know him well because nobody knew him actually. But he came to me with like his little clipboard one time and was asking me if I would sign on to this amicus brief to a Texas lawsuit throwing out other states' election results, right? This is the thing in December. And I remember I was just looked at him, I'm like, Mike, I mean, you know who I am. You know what I've been saying, right? Like, there's no way I'm going to sign on to this. And he kind of like scurries away with it. And I remember thinking, like, nobody's going to sign on to that, of course. Well, almost 100 did, including, by the way, Kevin McCarthy, who told Liz Cheney that there's no way he's going to sign on to that. I'm like, come on, I'm not going to sign on to that. The next morning, the list of people that signed on to this Mike Johnson attempt to overturn the election came out. Kevin McCarthy wasn't on it. He put out a statement that said his name was inadvertently left off and that he was added onto it. That goes to show what kind of a man Kevin McCarthy is. Mike Johnson's just the guy that was leading what Kevin McCarthy was. Can I say the split screen, though, of Jenna Ellis tearfully admitting of lying to the American people in court and apologizing, and at the same time, the base entry to be considered as a speaker candidate for the GOP was you had to be still lying about the election. Can I say that split screen and how much that shows that the GOP doesn't mind lying to its voters?
Can we also remind everybody about his very progressive stances on LGBTQ as far as everything?
Just like the law here in Weakley County don't mind going after a true born-again Christian that has been active in putting out his messages to the people for over 30 plus years that did not have our backs here at 430 Beach Grove Road or 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. There's no way in hell that they can deny that. Especially if you get to looking at how many times that the sheriff's deputies was out here after incident call after incident call after incident call, and they still didn't get a handle on it. They still didn't get a handle on it. After my brother and I hiring attorneys and going before court and still didn't get a handle on it, even though it all happened right here on this corner. There is no other way to look at the things that I am accusing law enforcement agencies of other than the truth. That either they was incapable, and if they're incapable, they need to go home anyways, because they don't have no business in being up there and trying to make decisions in people's lives, or they was actually behind it. Either or. I think I got a strong case in standing up for the death of a younger brother that should not have had to have went through what he went through, much less the stuff that I went through, especially due to the fact that whenever I come back, there was already World War III down here setting up. In addition to the community members, a lot of them may be old, or a lot of them may be dead right now, but they did not speak in our defense towards watching the abusiveness behavior that went on either on our home place or over here at my grandmother and grandfather's home place. They didn't care. Now, they cared about their own children. They cared about their own lives. They cared about their own skin. But whenever it come to the Jacksons, something had obviously been planted in these people's hearts and in these people's minds towards turning on the genealogy of this family the way that they did, going all the way back to my great-grandfather that was actually part of the pillar of this community around here. Not counting what his wife done towards being a midwife. It actually speaks volumes about certain people, not all people, but certain people in this community that has set back and allowed for these things to occur. And now it is filtered into our courts, it's filtered into our colleges, it's filtered into our agencies all over the country and all over the world, and that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing an anti-Christ, anti-Semitist movement all over the world. That's the difference between people standing up for unrighteous behavior, ungodly behavior, evil, versus people standing up for righteous behavior, standing up for the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the difference. Even Jesus asked them, while he was being beat on, spit on, made fun of, and mocked, for what good work do you persecute me for? And their reply back to Jesus was, we do not punish you because of any good works that you've done. We're punishing you because you claim that you are something that we know that you're not. Oh, really? Really? That's the very same thing that's happened in prophets of God year after year, culture after culture, generation after generation, on all 7 continents, again and again and again throughout history. And today, it's more so obvious than ever before that the true born-again Christian who believes in the Lord Jesus Christ pertaining to a righteous, holy, eternal, loving, living God are now receiving either persecution or people that's supposed to be standing up in their corner are not. And it doesn't matter if it's a judge, it doesn't matter if it's a jury, it doesn't matter if it's a community, it doesn't matter if it's a university, it doesn't matter if it's the governor or the president. This thing began in 1988, whenever 9 tapes went to Ronald Reagan, and they moved up onto those 9 tapes, but they did not pursue it. You wonder why you're in trouble? You wonder why you're $33 trillion in debt? You wonder how come you got all the gun violence? You wonder how come all the mass shootings? You wonder how come all the drugs and all the illegal immigrants coming over to our country and invading our country? Wonder no more. Quit wandering, for God's sakes. I continue to keep telling you these things, and obviously I'm either getting blowed off or people are so full of themselves pertaining to pride that they're not willing to do the proper and right thing. And if that be the case, which I'm pretty sure that's more than likely that's going to be the case, what does the Bible say? The Bible says that pride cometh before a fall. And I tend to wonder if various people, regardless whether they be in Obion County, Weakley County, Tennessee, Kentucky, Oklahoma, or wherever in America, I tend to wonder if that's just exactly what they want. They want this thing to fall. They want it to crumble. They want it to basically turn up onto itself to the point that civil war breaks out in our own land. Now, these same people would tell you, oh, that ain't what we want. That ain't what we want. Okay, if that ain't what you want, how come you ain't doing the proper thing? How come you ain't getting the people out of office that created this problem to begin with? If that ain't what you want, proof is in the pudding towards seeing your actions, not your words. I don't care about your words. Your words don't mean a thing to me or to God or anybody else. It's what you actually do. It's your performances that what matters. And I can tell you that the founder of the Windmill Ministries, first of all, I know I'm not perfect. I've made plenty of mistakes. But by and large, I have spent over half of my life in pursuit towards wanting to glorify my Heavenly Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And look what it got me. It got me a dead brother. Now that's something that the judges and the prosecuting attorneys and the probation officers up here in Weakley County needs to be very, very proud of, as well as the people over in Kenton, Tennessee, that was a part of this resistance movement going all the way back into 1983, whenever I spent over a year and a half with a family, praying with them, studying with them, working with their father, going to Bible studies, being fully dedicated in Bible study after Bible study after Bible study, and then them turn their back on me the way that they did. Wow, that's the way you treat your friends? If that's the way you treat your friends, I don't need enemies. I don't need enemies.
Need humanitarian aid, and Republicans have stripped that out as well. And of course, Ukraine, which is really out of money and is a fight for democracy as well.
Congressman Goldman, there was an effort.
It's not a fight for democracy in Ukraine right now. It's a fight for their lives. It's a fight for their very existences of what they sacrificed for years ago towards breaking away from the Russian party.
Oh, and why is it that some of Democratic colleagues did not participate in this vote to push out Santos?
Well, I think it was purely just political cover for the freshman New York Republicans who have been hearing a lot from their districts. I've been hearing a lot from their districts.
It's a tangle web. It's nothing but a tangled weave, spider web up there, and it's just one circus after another. It's one hoax after another. It's one horrifying event after another that the good people, not only in America but throughout the world, are getting caught up in. And unless they're willing to conform and unless they're willing to pull together, my friends, we're at the verge of evil exceeding and taking not just the American people over, but the whole world. Especially whenever you hear of things going on in Australia, you hear of things going on in the UK, you hear of things going on in all these other countries. Whenever we have people that's trying to burn down Jewish synagogues and burn down, destroy cemeteries. You know, it wasn't but a few years ago, whenever I first come back here in 2014, there was a group of people that was going around destroying people's gravesite headstones. I don't know if they've ever put an end to that. I don't know what that they was trying to accomplish, but it was something within them that was just out of control towards them being possessed, that wanted to go after any existences of the sainthood, even destroying their headstones and thinking that they're going to destroy the very meaning and what these people stood for. That is how idiotic that these people have become in the past few years, that we have seen this anti-Semitism grow and grow and grow to the point of where it is today. And it's nothing to laugh at, because Jesus Christ never, ever took the enemy at play. He never joked about the enemy. He never patronized the enemy. He never took the enemy at a light accord. He always looked at Lucifer, the Antichrist, Satan, in a very, very serious matter. And if we, as so-called Christians, or true born-again Christians, aren't willing to do the same, well, guess what? Odds are you're not going to make it to the end. Where it talks about he who shall endureth unto the end shall be saved, odds are you're probably not going to endure, because you are not fully sold out to Christ, because we can see that now in your actions. Oh, your words may be something totally different. Oh, you may be elegant with your speaking, kind of like Joe Osteen and other ministers out there that have become known. Your words does not mean nothing. It is based upon your actions. And the Bible is very clear about that, pertaining to works that are dead versus working in the unisys of faith in God, in Christ. We have seen the spoils now of what is happening in Satan rising up in these influences. And as he's rising up, he's also coming down. And it talks about that in Revelations, how that Satan will come down in great wrath, because it or he knoweth his time is short. We are living in that day. We are living in that moment, to where we're seeing these antichrist movements that is basically destroying families, destroying homes, destroying communities, destroying our nation. And if we're not smart enough to identify who the enemy is and what the enemy is doing, do you really think that we're ever going to be able to combat against the enemy? How can you be part of the solution to the problem whenever you are the problem? It goes back to the teachings of Christ, that if the blind lead the blind, guess where they're going to go? They're going to go off into the ditch, my friends. We didn't get $33 trillion in debt overnight. This thing has been festering. It has been boiling. It has been building. It has been evolving to where we are now. But yet now, somebody like me still can't rally the people, still can't make my case valid before the people. You're at the brink right here in Northwest Tennessee in seeing a catastrophe similar towards what happened in the early 1800s pertaining to the New Madrid fault. And whenever that happens, I'm just going to pack up and go somewhere. I ain't going to hang around here. Why do I want to hang around a bunch of people that, if they didn't like me and if they didn't support me before the catastrophe happened, do you think that they're going to like me or support me after the catastrophe happens? I'll be doomed. I'm basically already doomed to begin with, because I can't get people to stand in my corner. So do you really think they're so confused they want to blame everything on God and God's people? I got ministers that stand behind the pulpit that'll tell you everything that happens coming out of the sky is a movement of God. And they do not realize to this day, that there's more entities to deal with other than the entity of good. There is only two entities. But God is not going to come down to destroy his own people. Whenever my house gets blown away, or my house gets burnt, or my house winds up being attacked, I know that those are not coming from the entities of good. And if people can't understand that and identify that, then obviously they're the ones that are the blinding. They're the ones that are part of the problem versus part of the solution to the problem. And God help us all is the only thing I can say. Because I guarantee you, whenever God gets enough of it, he will bring destruction. It won't be Satan that will bring destruction to humanity. It will be God. And if you think you're going through harsh times now, you haven't seen harsh times. Whenever God gets enough of it, he gets enough of it, and he'll pull the plug. He'll flip the switch. He'll tell Gable, blow thy trumpet. And whenever he returns, he's not going to be returning back as a lamb. He's going to be returning as a lion, taking vengeance upon them who know not him and upon them who obey not him. It will be one of the hardest events that's ever happened to humanity, other than the Great Flood. The Great Flood, I put that on top because the Great Tribulation pertaining to God coming back in flaming fire has not occurred yet. But whenever it does, you'll know it. If you're left here, if you're still living, I promise you, you will know that you have made a horrible mistake. And now you're going to be left here to learn your lessons in a complete different way. That's the reason why the Bible says, for it was as the sands of the sea, as many that did not accept the mark and did not participate in the New World Order system, that it will be as the sands of the sea that was crying out under the altar.
Vladimir Putin is
crying out under the altar. How long, O Lord, how long shall it be until you avenge us? And the Bible says that they should rest yet for a short season. That will be after the seventh trumpet is sounded. Right now, we're in the first trumpet. Right now, we're in the stage of the first four horsemen of the apocalypse. The apocalypse has already began. We're not in the full-fledged part of it yet, but it will go through different degrees, and we're in the first degree right now. The second degree will be whenever that there'll be a mass slain all over the planet, and this will be the hour of temptation that shall fall upon all the world to try them that dwell here upon the earth, and that will be basically whenever all these people will think that they're doing their God a favor by getting rid of people like me, by going ahead and killing us. It will be a purging effect that will happen upon to the planet. And after that is whenever the sky will open, the dead shall rise, there'll be a few that will be transfigurated from mortal to immortal that will basically vanish from the earth. Very few. If you be on a house, do not return down. If you be in a field, do not come back. There'll be, on that day, two will be in a field, one will be taken, the other shall be left. On that day, two will be in a bed, one will be taken, the other shall be left. On that day, there'll be two working, one will be taken, the other shall be left. But it will be very few. Other than that, it will be a horrifying time for humanity on all 7 continents. And it don't matter if you live in a northern continent or a southern continent, it will be a horrifying time for the inhabitants here upon the earth. And then it'll go through another phase. And then after that third seal is open for 40 and 2 months pertaining to the false prophet, then it even get more serious pertaining to the pale horseman, that what followed after him was death and hell. Those that didn't take the mark, death followed. Those that did take the mark, hell followed. Hell followed. In other words, They cried to want to die because they realized that they'd made the biggest mistake in their entire lives by accepting this new system, this Antichrist system. But at that point in time, it'd be too late. The Bible says that they cried to want to die, and death fled from them. The rocks fell not. That will be basically whenever you're walking dead, your zombies will be walking around on the planet to the point that you can basically try to kill them and they can't, and they won't die. Walking zombies, walking dead. And it will be a torturous, torturous moment on the planet. And the Bible says that it will be a time of trouble such as humanity has never seen, nor shall ever experience ever again. You see, whenever God got ready to throw the towel in with the first people that he declared as being a total loss, basically doomed, he just went ahead and desecrated them people from the planet with a flood. Some of them, they may have hanged on for a few days. Some of them may have hanged on for a few weeks, depending upon where they was. But eventually, the flood took them all out. Other than a few. Other than a few. This time, whenever it happens, you're not just going to up and die. You are going to suffer immensely in your deaths. This is the Bible. This isn't me. All I am is the messenger. I'm just the carrier pigeon. I'm just delivering the message. But according to the Bible, according to the King James and the New Edition and the Old Edition and all the other translated editions, these are the things that have been predicted that it's going to occur to humanity. And no matter how hard that you want to fight up against it, no matter how hard you want to go up against people like myself that's putting out the message, I got news for you. It's already in motion. It's already in motion. The trajectory that humanity is on right now is not something that just began yesterday. This trajectory has been going on now for quite some time. I put it in the category over here in the Western world since the assassination of Kennedy. Basically, our politicians has been walking backwards. They've been giving away everything, including the farm. And today, we no longer stand as a United States of America. We are so divided in so many different areas, in so many different states, on so many different levels, it ain't even funny. It ain't even funny. And if we do not have the ability to recognize the dangers that are fastly approaching us, then basically we have no one to blame but ourselves. And as far as I'm concerned, in that perspective, it could not have happened to a better group of people. Saying it remorsefully, not braggably, not boastfully, but saying it remorsefully, that it couldn't have happened to a better group of people that has allowed for these exchanges to fall up onto them. Now, they can be like Hamas, and they can stand under their own people, using humans as shields, or they can stand under the coattail of a woman or a child. But I got news for you. Just like my grandmother used to always tell us boys, every pot has to stand on its own bottom. And it don't matter who you are, where you are, what part of the country that you're from, what ethnic group that you're of, or what religion that you believe in. Every human being will give an account for the things that they have either done or have not done, that they should have done or should not have done, including myself. I'm not exempt. There's no prejudice whenever it comes to Judgment Day. And so many people has been trying to stop that from occurring, and I got news for you. You can't stop something that's already in the works. You can slow it down, but you can't stop it. Just like all the oil petroleum tycoons out there that has done the damages that they've done by lying to the people and telling them that climate change is not real, that the planet is not warming up, even though we hear NASA and other professional scientists that's been screaming at the top of their lungs now for basically the past 10 years, especially the past 5 years since COVID has hit, especially in the past 3 years since Biden has climbed on board and other people is acknowledging the same thing. Now, you can be an anti-Semitist all you want, and you can blame everything on somebody else. But ultimately, in the end, it's going to be you that's going to give an account for you. Not the things that you've said, but the things that you've either done or the things that you did not do. Going back to what went on in my particular life between the year of 2014 and 2017 that costed me the death of a brother. And the courts knows it. And the more that I make these digital videos, put them out to social media, I just hope and pray that one day my brother's death will be vindicated in seeing the people that was responsible, that brought this hullabaloo to this particular piece of property after I moved back here. I just pray to God that my brother's death will be vindicated. Just like all the other Christians out there, that their deaths will be vindicated too. Because they was ridiculed. They was persecuted. They was made fun of. Just like all the people right now that are attacking the Jews. The only thing that I can do at this point in time that God's will be done, and that one day their sacrifices that they have made for the past thousands of years over there in standing up for themselves, that they will be vindicated. And I know that they will. I know that they will. And you can go out here and you can throw a pitch fit if you want to. You can get in the floor and cry like a baby and go out here and sabotage grave sites and protest marches on universities all you want. But I promise you, the elect, God's chosen, regardless whether you be a Jew or a Gentile, their sacrifices will be vindicated.
Doing. You are aiding and abetting the enemy is what basically his own Republican Party was saying.
Yeah, and you had Senator Tuberville suggested the military is bloated and that these are just desk jockeys. And you had one of the senators that we're going to hear in just a second walking through who exactly these men and women are and why they're not desk jockeys. To quote the great Alex Corson, our executive producer, quoting Die Hard, "Welcome to the party, pal."
Right.
Where have these senators been for the last several months while this has been going on? They've been saying privately and sometimes in public that they don't like it, but doing nothing about it. So last night, Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama faced backlash from members of his own party who angrily challenged his months-long blockade. They attempted to unanimously approve 61.
As far as I'm concerned, one of the main categories that broke the camel's back was during, I think, Obama's administration, whenever the Supreme Court put a green light in telling everybody and their brother that it was all right to be a homosexual or a lesbian or a LGBTQ convert. I've seen things going on in nations of people representing the rainbow colors that I never would have thought that I would have ever seen. And we're talking about the UK. We're talking about Europe. We're talking about Queen Elizabeth that was living during that time that all that went on. We're talking about Australia. We're talking about all these other countries that followed suit with what the Supreme Court had done. Now, Look at where we are today in seeing all the anti-Semitisms risings all over the planet.
Chinese admirals and their military, they're probably watching this debate right now going, I can't believe my luck. Can't believe our luck. Maybe we should attack Taiwan tomorrow. We're going to look back at this episode and just be stunned.
We already are.
At what a national security suicide mission this became.
So Senator Sullivan served
We
in the
already
United States
are.
Marine Corps for many years. Joni Ernst, Senator Ernst served as well. You see the frustration there that, again, we've been hearing privately.
Right.
Sometimes we'll hear Mitch McConnell say sort of politely, I disagree with what Senator Tuberville is doing, but it's the way the system's set up. Somehow, for some reason yesterday, the dam broke and they all came out against Tuberville.
I think a lot of it, Jonathan Weir, probably has to do with the fact that you had an episode with a Marine Corps Commandant. I mean, and by the way, I guarantee you every one of those senators, first of all, were angry behind the scenes all along. Oh, yeah. But I guarantee you every one of those senators got calls from the Pentagon going, what in the holy hell are you guys doing? We've got guys being sent to the hospital now because they're like, one job is enough to just absolutely rip somebody apart. You're making them do 2, 3, 4 jobs because of this clown from Alabama that even people in Alabama don't support? Like, you know the pressure coming from the Pentagon with one of their own being sent to the hospital on a health issue. I mean, you know it's getting intense now.
Yeah, and that Marine Corps leader hospitalized over the weekend. He had spoken openly days previously that he is working 2 jobs and simply couldn't do it. It was too much. And now we saw him have this health episode. My understanding is, talking to a few Republicans involved with this yesterday, that played a role, as did, of course, just the escalating crisis in the Middle East. This is not a moment where the U.S. military cannot be at anything other than at full readiness, as we have 2 aircraft carriers in the region. And of course, there are still the war in Ukraine and concerns about China and Taiwan as well. And we saw from Lindsey Graham, who of course is a hawk and always been pro-military. He was very firm. Dan Sullivan from Alaska, the strongest voice there. Mitt Romney. There were others, all taking shot after shot after shot. Tuberville, who says he won't back down. He says he's staying with this despite the onslaught from his own party.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Joni Ernst spoke quietly, but gave George one of the harshest digs when she finished by saying, I don't respect men who don't keep their word.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really is just an absurd situation. I mean, somebody should maybe they have been telling this guy you can't play football without a roster, and then he's just sitting there and blocking everything. And you know, partly it's the Senate rules that we've all heard about, but also I've wondered why it is that all of these officers have to have their commissions. I mean, they have to be confirmed by the Senate. It does not make any sense because as I understand it, the Constitution, the Appointments Clause of the Constitution only requires principal executive officers and essentially cabinet heads to be confirmed by the Senate. And by law, Congress can say that everyone else can be selected by just the president alone, or even by the courts of law, depending on what they. Here you've got thousands of people up for nomination, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up with the Senate rules that say that one senator can insist on debate on every single one of those. I mean, the rules as they're set up now depend on good faith, and what we're seeing here is not good faith.
There's absolutely no good faith whatsoever. It has nothing to do with the military. It's gutting readiness, Donnie, and as you heard Senator Sullivan say, that we're going to look back on this, and it's just going to be a catastrophic suicide mission that we've put our military on. And unfortunately, you have that happening in with the Republicans in the Senate with Tommy Tuberville, and then in the House, you've had House members who constantly eviscerate and attack and beat down the United States military, hate the United States military, hate the generals that run the United States military, hate Mark Milley when he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who were so disrespectful to him, it was sickening. It made me sick. Nobody, not even the most left-wing radical when I was on armed services, ever treated a general or an admiral with such
such a little respect. And then you add on top of that you've actually had Republicans in the past saying they wish the United States military was more like the Russian military. The same Russian military that tried to bum Russians in Syria. And like 2 minutes later, 500 of them were dead, because guess what? You know what the special ops said in Syria? Welcome to the party. You know, really, do we really want our troops to be like, right? Let me answer that. Hell no. Ask any general, not only in America, but anywhere across the world. Do you want your troops to be like the Russian troops or like American troops? You know, I remember way back.
This is the reason why that the other day I put out some memos of our military being accused of being bootleggers. What is a bootlegger? Somebody that's doing stuff either illegally or not appropriate. Our men and women, because of the politics above them, are the ones that has given them this black eye. Our military needs to be looked up to in every perspective, even though there's been times that there was breaches. They are still on the clock 24/7 for our protection.
They're scared of our military. They quake in fear. The only people that don't seem to respect our military right now are Republicans on Capitol Hill and the guy who's going to be the next president of the United States if the Republicans have their way. It is grotesque. They stand alone in the world in their disrespect for the strength and the power and the might of America's armed services.
It's appalling. It's appalling.
Well said, sir. Beyond the grotesqueness of it, the stupidity of it. There's one thing that pretty much everybody agrees on, Republican, Democrat, of course, not these knuckleheads, is a respect and a love and a reverence for military. I can go forward to 2024 and basically think about an entire campaign, military for Joe Biden, military for Democrats. Have a campaign called Generally Speaking, where I get every general to come forward, and as we already have, and just come forward and said, I understand the importance of readiness. I understand the importance of defending our country. And
by the way, I understand better than you because, as the senator said, we were in Fallujah.
Yeah.
Right? We were fighting across Afghanistan and in Iraq, Tommy Tuberville, while you were sitting there playing Appalachian State.
So if you have the military supporting Democrats, that's about as strong as an endorsement. So you,
by the way, no disrespect to Appalachian State at all. I mean, some of the best people I know, Appalachian State, they beat North Carolina, or they beat Michigan. I love Appalachian State. Some of the best people I know are from Appalachian State. I'm just saying.
Good program.
From Auburn, you know, it's a different level and blah, blah, blah. It's not Fallujah. Go ahead.
But that's the campaign that I would run, generally speaking. And just have generals talk and just say, look, here's one side, here's the other side. Because if the Republicans lose military and they lost law and order, what do they have? Kind of don't have that much left. They have nothing left if I really think about what they've been talking about lately. But
hot air. Hot air is what they got.
The other thing that Tommy Tuberville is I don't know where the university, the Republican University of Stupid Performative Art, that the game is whether you're
Josh Hawley,
whether you're
calling a guy whose mom survived the Holocaust, an anti-Semite, and whose family, a great number of them were lost in the Holocaust, calling them an anti-Semite yesterday.
Yeah.
Our Tuberville is hearing about this today.
Yeah, well, Matt Gaetz and what he's done is like, he's the formula. Be really stupid, be really obnoxious, be completely off your rocker. Get exposure on television, raise money.
Put it on your Instagram, but only cut the part where you're insulting.
I don't know where that school is that's teaching them these.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Yesterday, Josh Hawley. So Josh Hawley insults
Mayorkas,
a man whose mother survived the Holocaust, I think Auschwitz, and he's so proud of it. He puts it up on his Instagram because he is that shameless.
Yeah.
You know, he should have gone, if he had any.
I wonder what Arnold Schwarzenegger right now is thinking about all this.
all, he would have apologized. No humanity.
I bet Arnold Schwarzenegger will speak up about all this.
Can party.
And that's one of the key rules to Donnie's point. Never apologize either. Never apologize. Lean into it. Even when you insult the son of a Holocaust survivor, lean into it. Raise some money off of it. We've had a lot of people asking us, how can this be, Caddy? How can one man hold up this legislation, these promotions in this case? The truth is, in the United States Senate, one senator can hold up anything. Now, they usually go around them quickly, or the senator has made his or her point and then move along. But here now, Tommy Tuberville standing alone, as we saw yesterday, even among his Republican colleagues. So the question is, as he makes this stand choosing against the United States military and its readiness and for abortion, being against abortion so that members of the military cannot go state through state to have health care. What is the world thinking as it watches this? What does it look like from London, from Europe? What does it look like in the Middle East with all the crises that are exploding?
Weakness.
Okay, I mean, it reminds me of something Bob Gates, when he was defense secretary, said to me when he was defense secretary under President Obama, that America faces three threats in the world. It faces a rising China, a declining Russia, and it faces the threat of itself. And by that he meant the dysfunction in American politics. And, perhaps back when he was talking to me at the beginning of the Obama administration, it seemed pretty mild compared to what it is today. Tommy Tuberville shows no signs of backing down. And you now have the consequence of that, people in military positions who are extremely tired. They are working, as this general who was hospitalized was working from 5 a.m. in the morning till 11 p.m. at night doing 2 jobs. You don't make good decisions when you're working those kind of hours. You don't make the right kind of decisions in America's best interests. And I think it's all part of this questioning of whether America is governable. Is this a country that works still? Joe and I were talking about this the other day. Does it work on guns? Does it work on security? Does it work on a Senate level? Does it work on being able to keep itself open? Does it work on being able to pay its bills? The dysfunction, is something that is slightly, sadly, being baked into the equation amongst America's allies, and I'm sure amongst America's adversaries. And that's not a good place to be. You don't want them to say, oh yeah, this is just more Washington dysfunction, we're kind of getting used to it. That's not a great position to be in.
And it is so strange
because it shows weakness. That's why. It shows instability, it shows weakness, and our allies and our enemies see this. That's why I said what I said. I think it was either yesterday or the day before in some of the literature that I put out, that our military are being falsely accused of being bootleggers. If you know what a bootlegger is, and it don't have to be whiskey that you're bootlegging, but looking at our military from the time that it began, going back way, way, way before the Civil War, has always stood in being fair-minded and standing up for the ways of the just, not the unjust. They didn't go around ordinarily and pillage and take advantage of people. They was basically, I think, deceived, misled for whatever reason. The way that they come over here and basically tried to genocide the red man, the Native American man. But you still have to look at the military towards saying they was still doing what they felt like was fair and right. I don't think that they were just killing Indians just to be killing Indians. For some strange reason, I think that they was actually doing what they felt like that they was doing in a sincere way. But once more, you can be sincere, but you can be sincerely wrong. Just like my grandfather, my great-grandfather, that lived right down the road here, less than a quarter of a mile from where I live right now, that was hired by the state of Tennessee of going around hanging people towards being a duty-ator. And I'm sure the majority of the people that they hung during that time was probably blacks. But because they was doing what they thought was right, they was still sincere in what that they was doing, even though they was sincerely wrong. Just like the Unabomber or somebody that puts on a suicide vest in the Middle East that thinks that he's going to die and go to heaven and be with Allah and drink all the wine and be with 99 virgins. They're sincere. You can't deny the fact that they're sincere, but they are sincerely wrong. They are sincerely wrong. And our military right now is being accused of being a bootlegger type industry or organization because of bad politics in our country. And it's really sad, because out of all the people that you shouldn't be blacking their eye, it shouldn't be the military, my friends, because if the military turns on the political aspect of it, then guess what's going to happen to the government? You got it. You got it. It'll fall. And I tend to wonder if that's not what certain people are engaged up into, towards premeditating all this to happen that very same way. And whenever that happens, I'm going to be like that event the same way as I am if the New Madrid Fault hits again in West Tennessee. I want to get out of here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here whenever this government shuts down or fails. I don't want to be here whenever another bad earthquake hits this area. I don't want to be here, because I know how the people feel about me now. And they blame everything on God or God's people. You can kind of see that with all the anti-Semitism going on. So, do you really think that I want to live on this planet during the horriblest of horrible times? No way. No way. Go ahead and take me out now. Just like if there's a nuclear war, I hope one lands right here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, because I do not want to be left here during the aftermath of a nuclear war. It's bad enough to die, but to suffer and die is even worse. And if people don't agree with that, then obviously they're in some other galaxy, some other warp. They're warped themselves if they can't see that and understand that. That's why Jesus said that it would have been greater or better for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, because God went into that city and destroyed them. Wasn't nobody left. Even Lot's wife that was turned into salt. He got tired of it. He ended it. This time the way he's going to end it is going to be in a more dramatic, justifiable way, in going after the people that have brought this upon to the good people. Especially whenever all these petroleum oil companies are doing the damages that they're doing towards lying to the people, plus gouging the people, like they did last year in Exxon, Valve, Shell, and all of them making more profits than what they've ever made in their entire lives. How much more can people that are deceived throw this planet off into chaos than what they're doing right now? And that's where this country's going. And it's sad. It's appalling.
You usually have, George, you'll have countries begin to fall apart, and that'll be a leading indicator of a political system starting to collapse because it can't keep up. Here, you have the United States military stronger than any military in the world. And if you look at it relative to the rest of the world, this is the strongest position we've been in since 1945, end of World War II. You look.
Why? Why are we the strongest? Because we are organized, coordinated, and we stay together. There's an entity within the White House that is trying to separate that power, separate that force, separate that unity. And once that happens, then the morale gets torn apart afterwards. Once both happen, then we will be setting ducks towards any and everything happening here in America. And that's whenever you have to worry about the red, white, and blue American flag, not just going half staff, but going all the way down to the ground, and another regime, another government taking this country over. And if you can't see that that is what is happening right in front of your very eyes, then either you are incompetent and incapable of seeing these things, or you're part of the problem to begin with. I dedicated basically all summer in making a memorial out here. Not for Dennis Jackson, not for my family genealogy, but for the victims of those who have went through endless suffering and pain. And what happens to it after I'm dead and gone, I don't know. But I know that I've done my part. Now, the rest of the community around here, if they don't do their part, I'm not going to be held accountable for what they either don't do or do. Just like they're not going to be held accountable for the things that I do or the things that I don't do. Every pot sits on its own bottom. But the direction that we are heading into is a very, very dangerous trajectory that I don't think that I've ever seen escalate this way ever since the Civil War. That even one of their great military strategists over in Europe said that it was unpreventable. You got people like me that's saying it can be prevented. But then whenever you don't see actions from the people that you're telling this to, other than seeing total chaos, then it's obvious that you have hit a brick wall. And this ministry, as far as I'm concerned, hit a brick wall ever since the movement, the resistance movement, come forth in the White House during the latter part of Ronald Reagan's administration. And it filtered down. And it basically filtered down through Homeland Security. Now, I realize the same group of people that's in Homeland Security today are not the same people that was in Homeland Security either in 1988 or 1989 or 1990 or 91, whenever it was that Wheeling, West Virginia done what they done during the time of George Walker Bush's administration. I realize that there's a whole different set of people and a whole different set of circumstances in there today. Hopefully that will be what saves us, is that there has been a new breed of people in Homeland Security, and that they, instead of being part of the problem, will be part of the solution to the problem pertaining to our military affairs. I do not want to see war. I don't want to see anguish. I don't want to see hardship. I don't want to see nobody getting hurt, much less killed. And I don't really think that our United States military does neither. But without them, we're doomed. And it don't matter if it's the people in Yale or Harbor or wherever. If they can't understand that, then obviously something is wrong with their understanding. Keep in mind, there's a complete, total different entity between the entity of the church versus the entity of our military. There's a lot of people that's just like me that's involved with the military that has a strong faith in Christ. That doesn't make them evil. It doesn't make them antichrist, but they know the difference between the two. And they know that without the both, without the blessings of the Almighty, if we was to ever get into a major conflict, which I still say to this day, that's the only thing that saved this generation over here in America, that had enough sense to manifest the atom bomb and then use it to prove their point that we as a Christian society over here did not have to take what was going on pertaining to the Holocaust, that was the only thing that saved America, which was God and the godly people that acted upon godly affairs in the military. Yes, they are two separate entities, but at the same time, without the both, you're doomed. That's the reason why God, if you look at the Old Testament, God was right there with various kings and right there with various organizations of power plays that was going on, that even one king, according to the Bible, that even scientists agree with, that there was one day stolen from society because during that 24-hour period, God stopped the planet from circulating just to allow daytime to remain so that that one king would be able to conquer over the other king. Now, I know the Antichrist, I know that the agnostic, I know those that are lukewarm are going to snigger and laugh about that. Just like they probably snigger and laugh about Jonah being swallowed up by a whale, or an axe floating in the water, or going around a building and blowing a trumpet and all of a sudden the walls of the building falls down to the ground, or the sea opening up. I know that people are going to laugh at that. So that does not it does not ecstatically astound me whenever I hear a people that laughs or makes mockery of God and God's people. It really don't it's not astonishing to me. A matter of fact, I would be astonished if they was not criticizing the true born again believing Christians.
Our economy. Caddy's talked about it all the time. We can have Ratner talk about it. Compare the United States economy to Britain's economy, to Europe's economy, to China's economy. We are light years ahead of everybody right now. Strong. I mean, the Fed is doing everything it can do to tamp down and to beat down this economy. Can't do it. We just keep growing. I mean, you can look at the education and yes, woke, and you've got all of these other problems. You've got administrators that won't stand up to anti-Semitism. At the same time, best colleges and universities on the planet, there's not a close second. Everybody across the world sends their kids here if they can because they want them to come to America. We have a crisis on the southern border and even on the northern border now. Why? Not because America sucks. Not because America is ungovernable, but because if you talk to any of those people crossing the border, if you talk to people that have immigrated here legally, which is the way we have to do it, we have to get order and do it that way, what will they tell you? Well, they'll tell you what they've told me. They really do believe America's streets are paved with gold. They really do believe America is the last hope for a dying world.
We are the beacon. 1,000 lights or 1,000,000 lights, whoever it was that said that, and I think it was the Bush administration that come out with that. 1,000 lights or 1,000,000 lights pertaining to be that northern star. And once we tear down that northern star, it will be not only chaotic in America, but it will be chaotic on the world, in the world. And at that point in time, that's whenever God will blow the trumpet and he will cast this planet into a state of chaos like you cannot even begin to fathom. We're right here at the brink. We're at the doors of all this happening. So you can snigger, you can laugh, you can make fun, you can be a climate denier, you can be a Holocaust denier, you can be a Donald Trump election denier, you can deny it all you want, make fun of it all you want. But if it has been ingrained and chiseled in stone of what is going to occur, all, A-L-L, all, Jesus said, the gates of hell would not prevail against the kingdom of God. All. I don't care if it's the demons that live less than a half a mile or a mile from me, or if it's the demons over in Obion County or Weakley County, or if it's the demons just in Tennessee or Kentucky or Oklahoma. All. Or the demons in Washington, D.C. All will not prevail. That God's people will prevail. All the gates of hell, Jesus said, will not prevail against the kingdom of God. So I know, regardless of what happens to me, I'll be like Job, regardless whether the worms devour my body today or tomorrow or whenever. I know that I'm on the right side of history. And I'm going to continue to stay on the right side of history because I'm on the right side of God. And I don't care how badly that they persecute me. I don't care how badly that they don't want to support me. I don't care how badly that they want to get out here and bash me and tell all kinds of lies about me. I don't care how badly that the courts in Weakley County don't want to be held accountable or responsible towards what went on out here. That's okay. Because ultimately, in the end, it will be God and the Lord Jesus Christ that will vindicate his people. Those who are true to the faith that endureth all the way to the end. For Christ said that he would be with us even until the ends of the world. And that is a promise that will not be broken. I don't care how many demons want to get up and protest and scream and holler or do whatever. That is a promise that will never be broken.
They believe it because compared to what they're living in and where they're living, we still are. And yet, why is it? With all these indicators, with teen pregnancy at the lowest rate in 70 years, with childhood poverty going down, why is it that we have a Washington, that we have politicians there that are so unworthy of the nation they govern?
Because people vote for these politicians. And that is, to me, the big mystery. We live at a time where the standard of living we have today is as good as any group of human beings has had in human history.
Better.
I mean, you know, everybody out there, including people who don't live so well, they have their fancy Google phones and whatever, and we have it so good that some people just are looking for something to gripe about, and we develop this as, I'm trying to express it as, it's a form of nihilism. They want to see institutions torn down because they're envious of other people. They don't have enough. They don't feel they have enough. They don't have enough satisfaction in their lives. So they vote for these people. And then these people cater to them and raise money by catering to their anger and their... And
most of it is based around the love of money. And the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. Most of it is based around greed. Most of it is based around self-satisfaction. It's no longer about we the people. Now they'll tell you it's about we the people, and they'll tell you that they're doing what they're doing for the betterment of we the people, just like they'll promise you that they'll fix that pothole that you've been arguing about and talking about, or the next bridge or the road down the road, just to be elected. But then after they're elected, they don't do nothing. Their words are in vain. So, you know, be it as it may, the people in this great nation, I'm telling you, have an awakening that they can either go the pleasant way or the unpleasant way in this, I guess you'd call it this pivoting point in history. But if they do not have that right there guiding their footsteps, pertaining to the Star of David, they will be doomed. They will be doomed. No matter if it be in the Western world, no matter if it be wherever. And I really believe that the leader of Jerusalem over there knows this. And that's the reason why he's doing what he's doing in protecting his people, in protecting his land. God bless America. God bless our troops. And good luck to each and every one of us in heaven. Help us all. Shalom.